Welcome back to Classic Books Deep Dive, everybody.
I'm Joanna.
I'm Michael. We're going to be tackling a book today that has been on my list to read for a while. And so,
This one's exciting.
yeah, it's called How to Talk. So kids will listen and listen. So Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Mazlish.
This is a classic.
It is a classic. I think it's been around for decades.
It has. It's been helping parents for a long time.
Yeah, I think it was written in the 80s. So.
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, but still incredibly relevant today.
Oh, absolutely. The advice is so practical, it just makes sense, you know?
Yeah, and one of the core themes that I really like is this idea of, like, accepting children's feelings.
Yes, even the negative ones.
Even the ones that make us want to pull our hair out.
Oh, yeah, the tantrums, the meltdowns.
All that stuff. And, it's so tempting to just be like, oh, you're fine. Don't be sad. Like.
Right, or just try to distract them. But Faber and Mazlish, they really emphasize the importance of acknowledging those feelings, like really validating them.
And they have this great exercise in the book where they ask you to imagine your boss yelling at you.
Oh, I remember that one.
And then it's like, how would you react if your boss just dismissed you or like started asking you philosophical questions?
Exactly. It makes you realize how those kinds of responses, even if we mean well, they don't actually help. They just shut down communication.
And one of my favorite takeaways from the book is this idea that all feelings can be accepted.
That's a good one.
Even if certain actions must be limited.
Right. So it's not about letting kids run wild. It's about creating a space where they feel safe to express their emotions,
Totally. And I love the story about the dad.
Which one?
Whose kid, wants to hit another kid.
Oh, yeah. He's furious.
He's so mad, and the dad's like, oh, here, draw your anger.
It's brilliant. Instead of lecturing or punishing, he gives him a healthy outlet to express that anger.
And it completely diffuses the situation.
It's amazing how effective these circle techniques can be, right?
It's amazing, and it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from the book. It says, when we describe the event, instead of talking about what you did, we seem to make it easier for the child to hear what the problem is and deal with it.
I love that quote. It's about separating the child from the behavior.
Right, and it makes it less about blame and more about problem solving.
And that leads us to another big theme in the book. Alternatives to punishment.
Like, how do we get kids to cooperate without resorting to, timeouts or yelling or...
Right, those power struggles that can be so draining. And one of the things that Faber and Mazlish suggests is actually writing notes.
Writing notes.
Yeah, like little messages to your kids. It sounds a little strange, but it can be surprisingly effective.
I remember reading about the mom who put up a sign that said, kitchen closed until dinner, because her kids were constantly snacking.
It's brilliant, right? It's a way to communicate your expectations in a clear, calm, and even humorous way. And it takes the heat out of the moment.
So instead of getting into a battle every time they open the fridge, she just points to the sign.
Exactly. It's like a silent agreement. And they also have a great story about a father who wrote a note to his daughter after she damaged one of his CDs.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
He expressed his disappointment, but also gave her a chance to make things right.
It's about accountability without shame.
Right. And it opens up a dialogue instead of shutting it down.
They take this idea a step further with their problem-solving method, which is like this 5-step process where you talk about the child's feelings, then your own feelings, then you brainstorm solutions together, you write them down, and then you decide on a plan.
So it's really about involving the child in the process, right?
Exactly. It's about giving them ownership and empowering them to be part of the solution.
I love that. And I actually tried this with my daughter the other day when she was refusing to get dressed for school.
Oh, how'd that go?
We sat down and I was like, okay, you're comfy. I get it. But we also need to leave on time. What are some ideas that would work for both of us? She came up with the idea of picking out her outfit the night before so she wouldn't have to think about it in the morning.
That's amazing. She solved her own problem.
Have a win-win.
Yeah. It's so empowering for kids when we give them the space to come up with their own solutions.
It really is. And it reminds me of how important it is to encourage autonomy in kids.
That's another big theme in the book, right? Letting go of our need to control and allowing kids to make their own choices, even if they make mistakes.
It's so hard, though.
It is. It's so tempting to just jump in and fix things for them. But the book offers some great tips on how to rephrase our responses in a way that encourages independence.
Like instead of saying, let me fix that zipper for you, you might say, I see you're having trouble with that zipper. Sometimes it helps if you push the end of the zipper all the way down into the little case before you pull it up.
It's subtle, but it makes a big difference.
It's about giving them the space to figure things out on their own.
And building their confidence and resilience along the way. Remember, we're not raising children, we're raising future adults.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of another quote from the book. Never underestimate the power of your words upon a young person's life.
That is a powerful one.
Our words can have such a profound impact on how kids see themselves and the world around them.
It's a reminder to be mindful and intentional with our language, to choose words that build up, encourage, and inspire.
So what about you? How has this book impacted you as a parent?
You know, it's made me realize how often I fall into that trap of like wanting to fix things for my kids.
It's so hard not to, right?
It is, especially when you see them struggling.
Yeah, you just want to jump in and be like, I got this,
But this book has really encouraged me to step back and let them figure things out more on their own.
Yeah, give them that space.
And it's been amazing to see how capable they are when we give them the opportunity.
And how much more confident they become.
Absolutely. And I have to say, the section on praise was a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I used to just throw out generic praise like, good job, or you're so smart.
Oh, yeah, me too.
But the book makes a really good point about how descriptive praise is so much more effective.
Like, instead of just saying, you're so smart, you might say, wow, you really figured out that puzzle. You must be so proud of yourself.
Exactly. It's about focusing on the effort and the process, not just the outcome.
And it helps kids internalize those positive qualities.
Right. They start to see themselves as persistent, creative problem solvers.
It's like you're giving them a mirror to see their own strengths.
Exactly. And they also talk about how generic praise can actually be counterproductive.
How so?
Well, it can create pressure and anxiety.
Oh, I see what you mean.
If you keep telling a kid they're the best artist ever, they might be afraid to try new things or make mistakes.
For fear of not being the best anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really about shifting our focus from labels to effort and progress.
Another thing that I found really fascinating was the section on how we unintentionally assign roles to our kids.
Oh yeah, like the good child or the troublemaker.
And how those labels can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
It's like we're putting them in boxes and then they start to act accordingly.
And it can be so hard to break free from those roles.
But the book offers some great techniques for doing just that.
Like what?
Well, one is to start looking for and acknowledging the opposite qualities.
So if you have a child who's labeled as shy, you might start looking for opportunities to highlight their outgoing side.
Exactly. It's about seeing them with fresh eyes and helping them see themselves differently.
And it's about recognizing that we all have multiple sides to us.
We're not just one thing.
Right. We're complex and multifaceted individuals.
And the book also has a lot of great tips on how to communicate more effectively in general.
Like what?
Well, one that I use all the time is describing the problem instead of blaming.
So instead of saying, you spilled the milk, you might say, looks like we have a spill. We need a sponge.
Exactly. It's about focusing on the solution, not the blame.
And involving the child in the cleanup process.
Right. It's about teamwork and shared responsibility.
Another communication tip that I found helpful is giving information instead of giving empty warnings.
Oh, like instead of just saying, don't touch the stove, it's hot.
Right. You might say, the stove is hot because it's been on. It needs to cool down before it's safe to touch.
It's about helping them understand the why behind the rules.
And it shows respect for their intelligence.
Exactly. You're treating them like capable human beings who can learn and understand.
And that respect goes a long way in building trust and cooperation.
And something else that really stood out to me was the importance of avoiding what they call the language of rejection.
What's that?
Those are the phrases that can make children feel dismissed, ignored, or belittled.
Like, don't be silly, or you're too little for that.
Exactly. And the book encourages us to rephrase those responses in a way that acknowledges the child's feelings and encourages their exploration.
So instead of saying, don't be silly, there's nothing to be afraid of, you might say, I can see you're feeling scared right now. Let's talk about what's making you feel that way.
It's about validating their experience, even if it doesn't make sense to us.
It's about empathy and understanding.
And that's really the heart of this book, isn't it? Creating a climate of respect and connection where children feel heard, understood, and valued.
Absolutely. And that's something we can all strive for, whether we're parents, teachers, or simply interacting with young people in our lives.
It's a journey, not a destination. We're all learning and growing, and this book offers some valuable tools to help us along the way. As we're kind of wrapping up our deep dive into this book,
Yeah.
I keep thinking about, how groundbreaking this book was when it first came out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It really challenged a lot of the traditional ideas about parenting,
Yeah. Back then, it was all about obedience.
Right. Obedience, control, children should be seen and not heard.
Right.
And Faber and Mazlish came along and said, no, kids have feelings too.
Yeah.
Those feelings matter.
We need to listen to them.
And when we listen to them, when we respect them, that's when we can really connect with them. And that's when we can start to build those strong, healthy relationships.
It's amazing to think how much our understanding of child development has evolved since then.
It really is. But what's so cool is that even though this book was written decades ago,
Yeah.
the core principles are still so relevant today.
They really are. It's about respect, empathy, connection.
Those are timeless values.
And I think that's what makes this book so enduringly popular.
It's not a fad. It's not a trend.
It's about fundamental human needs.
And I love how the book gives us those concrete tools to put these principles into practice.
Right. It's not just theory. It's practical advice that you can actually use in your everyday life.
And it acknowledges that we're not going to be perfect parents.
Oh, yeah. No one is.
We're going to make mistakes. We're going to lose our patience.
We're human.
We're human, exactly. Yeah. And that's, okay, the important thing is to keep learning, keep growing, keep trying.
And to be kind to ourselves along the way.
Absolutely. And to remember that we're not alone in this.
There's a whole community of parents out there.
Who are going through the same things.
Facing the same challenges, celebrating the same joys.
And that's what we're trying to do here with this podcast. To create a space where we can all come together and share our experiences.
Learn from each other, support each other.
And hopefully make this parenting journey a little bit easier and a lot more joyful.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into how to talk, kids will listen and listen, so kids will talk.
Yeah.
What are some of your final thoughts?
Well, I just keep coming back to the power of connection. That's really what this book is all about, isn't it?
It is.
It's about creating those strong, loving bonds with our children.
And those bonds are built on respect, empathy, and understanding.
Yeah.
And when we can create that kind of foundation, everything else just seems to fall into place.
It's amazing how those simple principles can have such a profound impact.
And it's not just about our kids, it's about all of our relationships.
Our spouses, our friends, our families. It's about communicating in a way that honors the other person, that values their feelings, that makes them feel heard.
And that's a skill that we can all benefit from.
Absolutely. So whether you're a parent, a teacher, a friend, a colleague.
These principles can help you build stronger, more fulfilling relationships.
And I think that's a really beautiful message to leave our listeners with.
I agree. So if you're looking for a book that can help you connect with the children in your life on a deeper level,
I highly recommend How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk.
It's a classic for a reason.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you.
Share your thoughts, your experiences, your questions.
Let's keep this conversation going.
So till next time, happy reading, happy talking, and happy listening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.